Here, death is often mitigated by a kind of sterility. So you have the hospital and then the funeral home, and many people see their loved ones alive in the hospital and then not again until the funeral home. And so there's a disconnection, partly because we've been so successful at eradicating disease, at stopping infection.
But you bring up that process, that tradition then of the funeral home and being able to have a wake or a funeral. Can you talk a little bit, though, about that act of physically coming together to mourn or comfort and how we really don't have that in this particular pandemic?
So one of the things I like to remind us all about is that we're very story-related creatures. We're narrative creatures, and how we make meaning in our lives and also in death is through story. And story can be ritual, or ritual can be story. It depends on how you want to look at it. But that allows us to process. We use our words. And often we go to these funerals, and what does everyone do? They share stories about the person that has died. So that memorializing process, that closure, partly comes about by you reimagining their life.
I'm thinking about the other things, though, that we are now missing during this pandemic. In my family, when someone dies, I'm thinking about the food. People from all over, friends who were friends from 20, 30 years ago, bringing a dish to the house and just sitting with the loved ones, not even with the person, perhaps at a wake, but with the loved ones. That is now gone. What can we do to still grieve and pay our respects without these rituals?
We can look at the way death has been translated by other cultures, and I like to use the Khmer Rouge, the Pol Pot regime. They killed many people in Cambodia. There's mass graves. But this is a really interestingly resilient society in terms of how they mourn, because they feel it's necessary to chant over a body in order to help that soul on its way. And obviously, if you're having mass disappearances of people being buried en masse, you can't do that in an individual way. So what they did is, as a community, as a religious community and as a culture, they instituted a new way of grieving, which allowed you to take things that belonged to the person, photographs, clothing, jewelry, articles, and chant over those things. So it was a kind of replacement. But they basically blessed the experience sort of retrospectively using new ways. And to me, that represents the real strength of what ritual and storytelling can do in the face of grief, is that if we don't have a story that works for us right now, we do have the power to make new ones.
And in the moment, we have technology that allows us to come together and be able to have these memorials through a Zoom call or through a phone call.
Absolutely, and I think that we're sometimes really still quite focused on how do I make the funeral an online event, when I would suggest how do we make our grief something that can be shared digitally. And it doesn't necessarily mean replicating or recreating exactly what might have happened in a funeral home, but thinking beyond that to the art, science, audio, visual possibilities that we have to express our magnitude of feeling for this person. And in some ways, because it is digital, it's also shareable outside the moment of the funeral, outside of your immediate circle as well. So I'd say right now we're looking toward a future where death will have touched everyone. And so I would almost encourage us to think more broadly about how we can connect not just to our immediate loved ones, but to other people who are suffering the same kind of dissonance as a result.
That's Brandi Scalace, PhD and author of Death's Summer Coat, What the History of Death and Dying Teaches Us About Life and Living. Brandi, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on.
Musicians and other performers are among those hit hard by the economic effects of this coronavirus. For many, most of their income opportunities have been canceled or delayed indefinitely. NPR's Anastasia Siolkas reports that many musicians are now trying their hand at teaching online.
Bassist Steve Whipple has played with everyone from Lady Gaga to NEA jazz master Toshiko Akiyoshi to his own group. musicians were getting in trouble. Tours were shut down, venues started closing left and right.
A lot of people are stuck at home, so I thought if we could connect those two populations, it would help employ the musicians who don't have work.
So he and a couple of friends set up a website called Maestro Match to pair up teachers with prospective students around the globe, both kids and adults. Within days, hundreds of musicians had signed up to teach, from emerging artists to world-famous professionals.
Some of my heroes are signing up to teach. I've been kind of blown away with the names, so it's really hurting every level of musicians.
While some musicians are racing to play catch-up, learning how to use video conferencing apps and figuring out how to accept payment electronically, others are old hands, like flutist and educator Barbara Cecil. Cecil's been teaching online for years. Coincidentally, most of her students are from one country that's been deeply affected by the coronavirus crisis.
I teach a lot of students from China because there are a lot of high-level students who want to go to American universities and graduate schools.
Cecil says she's learned that while there are some drawbacks to interacting with her students online, she's mostly found it to be really positive.
Working with somebody online is really focused. I can see everything they're doing because they're like right in front of my face, and I can't get distracted and they can't either.
Other musicians worry there's simply too much competition right now to really make any money.
It's a flooded market with online teaching at the moment, and we haven't necessarily seen any increase in prospective students.
Chris King is a trumpet player from Orlando, Florida. He gigs around the city and also works at the Disney theme parks. They're closed now, so he's telling his colleagues to look outside of music to make their monthly nut.
Whatever skill you have, by all means, this is probably the time to try and cash in a little bit on it.
Like landscaping or repairing instruments, whatever keeps the money coming in. But singer-songwriter Amy Spees says making music online is exactly the right thing to be doing for both teachers and students.
I know one thing that heals people is working on the thing that they love, even if it's not their job. And if you're stuck at home, why not work on songs? Why not work on songwriting?
Nothing good could come from this. You pull back and take it slow.
Spees lives in Nashville. She says people were anxious and they were already getting stir-crazy. So she's been offering group songwriting workshops online. They've been filling up, and not just with professional musicians.
Waiters, bartenders, service people who are stuck at home wondering, they want to create something because they've got to put their feelings somewhere, because if your feelings stay in your head, what are you going to do? Drink, take drugs. So I feel like that's my job as an artist and now as a teacher, to help those who want to express this and give them some tools and allow them a space that there's a community around them that can support them.
Spees says making art and music together, even virtually, is exactly the balm people need right now. Anastasia Tsoukas, NPR News, New York.
This is Here and Now.
Supporting WHYY, the Urban Affairs Coalition. In these challenging times, nonprofits depend on human and financial support. The Urban Affairs Coalition is home to over 80 nonprofits who serve our region's communities. Information at uac.org.
Supporting WHYY, Impriano Roofing, Siding, and Windows, committed to quality, integrity, and service for nearly 5 decades. Learn more at 610-644-4444 or impriano.com. Impriano, the best homes have an Impriano roof.
Supporting WHYY, the Museum of the American Revolution. While the museum may be temporarily closed, their online resources for all ages are always available to help the community remain engaged and active. From virtual field trips for kids to online gallery tours, archived live streams, and more, you can explore the museum from anywhere. More at amrevmuseum.org. Again, that's amrevmuseum.org.
Degrees tomorrow, overcast with a chance of showers, Tuesday's high in the low 60s. It's 2:33.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and your NPR station. From MathWorks, creators of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And LegalZoom, allowing people to remotely set up documents like wills and trusts. LegalZoom's network of independent attorneys can also provide guidance over the phone. More on estate plans is at LegalZoom.com.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Robin Youngs here in Maine. As countries struggle to deal with the health and economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic, cybersecurity experts are warning it could take a toll on computer systems. Think about it. Companies that usually handle sensitive information in their offices are telling employees to work from home. As Callan Rogers from member station WBUR reports, that can make them more vulnerable to hackers, especially if they're browsing websites they wouldn't visit if they were in the office.
You probably know digital acronyms like LOL and OMG, and maybe even NSFW. That's not safe for work, and it's a warning for, well, let's just say it, porn. Porn is one of hackers' favorite tools, and it may be more effective if a company's employees decide what's not safe for work is safe for working from home during the coronavirus outbreak.
I mean, adult sites have always been like in the top 3 categories of websites hosting malicious content.
This is Tyler Moffat. He's the senior threat researcher at the cybersecurity firm Webroot.
So yeah, I would say that is a reasonable assumption that we're going to see an increase in porn at home. You know, these cyber criminals, they're seizing on this opportunity during a difficult time of the quarantine and pandemic outbreak.
The website Pornhub says traffic is indeed spiking during the outbreak. But virtual voyeurs are not the only ones at risk of being hacked. The simple act of working at home can put a target on your back, says Tom Kellerman.